This is my Jerry Springer moment.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another Artist Chat. And today we have with us Ling. Hello, Lily. How are you?
Hi everybody. I'm good. How are you?
Oh, doing great as can be these days, of course. But I have the pleasure now of introducing exactly who you are, Lily. So sit back and relax. There's lots to say about who you are. Of course, you are a alumni of the University of Toronto. You graduated with a Bachelor of Music in Piano Performance. And I have to tell you, I still remember being at your graduate recital at Walter Hall. I still remember.
I think you remember more than I do.
maybe. I remember too that you are, of course, a alumni of Hart Theater. We'll get into your credits in a second, but you also went to Penn State and got an MFA in music direction.
Mm-hmm.
And your selected credits in Toronto are Next to Normal for Musical Stage Company and Once Upon an Island for Upstage, for acting upstage. There's many, many more credits, but we're only going to mention those two. Of course, off-Broadway, you were the music director for the revival of John and Jen. And of course, probably something we'll get into a bit later, is the music director for the touring production of Hamilton, a show that a couple people probably have heard of. So,
yes.
So we mentioned, Lily, just to get this out of the way, in terms of music director, let's not assume that everybody watching this video knows what that means. People can probably assume what it means, but could you tell us a little bit about what the whole spectrum, what does a music director do?
Many music directors, they all come from different backgrounds. Mine is a classical piano background, but I like to say the way I think about what I do is I lift the music off the page. We bring the composers their ideas and their vision to life. We also, practically speaking, we teach the music to the actors. We try to, like I said, respect everything that the composer wants to do, and we try to, convey that to the actors. I love musical theater because I think it is the most collaborative art form, and so I love being able to weave and make those bridges between text and music. We also a lot of the times rehearse and conduct the band, like something like Hamilton, and actually every show that I've done at Hart House has been a piano conductor book. So we play, we conduct with our heads, with our hands, into a camera half the time. So we get to do that, and then when you're doing a long-running show, like a commercial show like Hamilton, then what we end up doing is we're kind of the keeper, and we make sure that every show is at the same level for the audience to watch. And so we rehearse the actors, we have lots of understudies and things like that. So a jack of all trades, we do everything. Anything that has to do with music that you hear, the music director probably has a hand in it.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Lily. And at this point, let's get back to your journey at Hart House Theater. And I don't know if you remember this, but do you remember what was your introduction to Hart House Theater?
So I did a 5-year undergrad at U of T because my first year was in pre-med, and I remember I was so miserable, wasn't happy. And so I reached out and I was like, what is this Hart House Theater? And you guys were doing Godspell with the UC Follies. And I just sent an email to a person that we both know very well. I want to thank is Elena Mossoff. And they ended up losing, I think, their accompanist music director. And I just said, I did some stuff when I was in high school back in Vancouver. And I ended up coming in, playing some rehearsals for them, and then they said, great, you're hired. And I think that was my introduction, was with Godspell. It was just being in the right place at the right time.
Oh, that's great. I don't even remember that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's how it happened. Some best things happen by kind of a nice mistake. It wasn't really a mistake, but it just sort of.
It was a cold email. I think I emailed you and you forwarded my email to Elena. I think that's what happened.
Yeah. So Godspell was your first show as music director, Lily, and then that was followed up by the Rocky Horror Show, which was also a co-presentation with UC Follies, and then the Canadian premiere of Reefer Madness the Musical, I remember that one fondly. I'm sure you do too.
Yes, yes.
Then, not once but twice, Jerry Springer the Opera, also a Canadian premiere, 2 Canadian premieres in a row, and then the Toronto premiere of High Fidelity, the musical.
Yes.
That was quite the journey. That was 5 shows in a row, and you had such an impact on Hart House at the time. That was also when we first started producing a season, and when we when we started doing a season, we didn't do musicals right away, and I had to convince someone that it was a good idea to do musicals, and Godspell happened to be the first one, and it worked out really well, and things took off from there. So
Yeah.
so Lily, how did your experience at Hart House Theatre as a music director really complement your education at U of T? We know that you were at the Faculty of Music for piano performance, but did music directing help that journey?
It absolutely did. It complemented it. It made me a more well-rounded musician. I grew up as a classical pianist, and all the shows at Hart House ended up being these rock pop musicals that I kind of cut my teeth, and I got to learn about a lot of these things. I got to work with everybody from across the spectrum, from students, you know, and some recent grads from Sheridan and at Randolph and St. Lawrence College. And I really got to learn about the craft. I got to learn about different shows that I wouldn't have, because Hart House likes to take risks, and you know, with shows like Reefer Madness and Jerry Springer the Opera. And I think it was the most amazing experience. It really complemented my time at U of T, and it really added to everything, just my entire experience. And really at Hart House, because I was able to do all these things, there were people that I had met that introduced me to other people in the Toronto scene, but also I felt like I kind of got a head start. I learned a lot about musical theater, about music directing, working with bands, working with different actors. And so by the time I graduated, you know, from U of T with my bachelor's degree, I was ready to work. So I just felt like it was such an amazing experience, and I wouldn't be as ahead, I wouldn't have been, and I wouldn't be as successful if I didn't have all my time at Hart House.
Great. So I guess at the same time then, your experience at Hart House really helped you navigate the waters in the professional world once you got there.
Yeah, absolutely. I think my time at Hart House, like I said, it's so, it was such a holistic approach. It was very professional. You know, a lot of times when you go through music schools and things like that, they don't actually ever teach you the business of the business. And what I found that was most amazing was, even though I was still a student and I was a young student, you know, when we first met, I was 18, 19. I was never treated like I was a student. I was in meetings, you know, with the production team, and I was learning all these things. I was going. At the time, I had no idea, you know, what certain cables were, and I had no idea of certain theater lingos, or even what a production meeting was, and how to look at a production schedule, and what a Zis probe was. I didn't know about any of it. And during my time at Hart House, I learned about all of it. Everyone was so wonderful and so patient with me that by the time I graduated, I had all these tools in my tool belt that I could use in a professional setting.
Great. That's fantastic. And let's go back and talk a little bit about a couple of the shows that you're involved with at Hart House. And, you know, it's not often that Hart House Theatre has the hottest ticket in town, but that did happen with Jerry Springer the Opera. It was such a hot ticket that we did it twice. And the first time it was directed by Richard Ozunian. And can you tell us a little bit about the experience for Jerry Springer? Because it was an opera, a real difficult opera, versus sort of the more book show musical theater shows that were happening before that. So was there extra challenges with that?
It was an amazing experience. It was one of the shows that I think really brought together the Faculty of Music and Hart House Theatre, and it had the ability to just amalgamate everything that I learned and knew. So it was my upbringing that I was always more comfortable with Bernstein and Sondheim than I ever was with Rocky Horror, but it was just this amazing ability, the show, to bring everything together. And I think, you know, with Richard and his experience and his knowledge of theater, musical theater, we had some amazing, you know, our lighting designer, our stage manager, set designer, everything was at such a high level. And then we were also able to get actors and performers from the Faculty of Music, and then professionals also, you know, who were either students at U of T or recent grads from the top training schools in Canada, and being able to bring that all together to, you know, with a piece where not a single page did not have a single swear word in it. It was kind of amazing. And it was, yeah, it was, and I remember, like, the band was so big, we had to split the band. So I was sitting and learning how to do that. That was kind of crazy. You know, I was like in the middle, in front of the stage, and we had the band split into two, and we still made it work. So, you know, just problem solving, and yeah, and people loved it so much. So it was amazing. Yeah.
I was just about to ask about the position that you're in for that show, right in what we call the moat. And actually for that show, the Springer audience, the chorus, was right next to you in the moat with you.
Yeah.
So it was a bit of maybe a challenge too, because you had people the side of you and the band in front of you and actors in front of you everywhere, which was different than most shows. If I recall correctly, you were back upstage with the band behind the set. Is that, yeah.
Yeah, it was one of those shows where they needed to see the conducting. And so we had to have, now that you mention it, I still remember now, yeah, having the Springer audience on either side and conducting them. And, you know, and I think the great thing about my time at Hart House was also having all these different, not even problems, but, you know, problem solving and learning all these things. I think, again, it just, by the time you got to a regular pit where everybody could see you, you're like, oh, well, that was nothing compared to Hart House.
And for that show too, we had the writer fly in from England, Richard Thomas, who wrote Jerry Springer the Opera. He came to see it the first time that we did it. And we also had some other writers come to see a musical you worked on, Reefer Madness, the musical.
Yeah.
We had the writers fly in from Los Angeles to see it because it was the Canadian premiere, and that was really exciting. And for that one, you worked with director Elena Mossoff, who you have mentioned already, and I know that she impacted your career. And like, what were some of the things that you learned from her and working with her?
Sorry, you broke up. Say that one more time.
Yeah, I was just saying, working with Elena.
Yeah.
You worked with her on what, 3-4 shows, I think.
Mm-hmm.
What was some of the impact that she had on you?
I think with Elena, you know, I think the most important thing was her just taking a chance, be like, I like this girl, we're gonna do this, you know, and just getting a foot in the door, and just the idea of, you know, trusting that, you know, someone who's new, you know, taking a chance on them. But also, again, like all these theater lingos that I had no idea about, you know, what a dramaturg was, you know, and all these things that she was so great with explaining, and she was so inclusive. And, you know, it was understanding, it was really the first time I understood that theater, like I said, it's such the most inclusive art form, and that everybody works together, and, you know, and just respect that the team has, and how fun it could be. And in a way, you know, it kind of, every time I did a show at Hart House and I worked there, I'd go back and I do, you know, I have to sit in a little room and practice my classical pieces. And I was like, well, this is boring compared to that. And it really got me, you know, all my experiences at Hart House really got me hooked on theater. And I think it's really taken me on this journey that I'm so thankful for. That's
great. So the next, I think the next path in your journey was going to Shaw Festival. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
What did you do there?
I interned there right out of school on a not too well-known show called One Touch of Venus. It's like old Kurt Weill show, but it was, yeah, so I worked on that.
And so let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now, what you were doing until this pause that we are all in. And that was working on one of the touring productions of Hamilton. And maybe if you could let us know how did you get into that? What has been your journey with Hamilton like, and what is it like music directing that such a pivotal show and a game-changing show?
Um, I was very lucky that I went to grad school and my MFA at Penn State, and it's a very small program. And my upperclassman, he actually was the music director for Kinky Boots for a long time. And after that tour closed, he got the job for as the music director for the production that was in Toronto when COVID stopped everything. And when our supervisor asked him who he wanted as his associate, he actually put my name up. So actually at the time when I auditioned, there was a few rounds of auditions, but my first round, I was actually in Shanghai associating and conducting The Lion King for Disney, which was another crazy story because it was all in Mandarin. And so my first audition was in Shanghai, and then I came back and I auditioned again. And it was the craziest thing to learn it, but for all the music directors, for us to audition, we have to be able to play and rap at the same time. So learning that was kind of crazy. And so it's been an amazing journey working on it. I started off, like I said, as the associate, and I had the amazing pleasure of just being able to tour all around the US. And the tour was amazing because we would just be in the city for 4 to 6 weeks at a time. You really got to explore the people. We were in the Midwest to the Carolinas, all the way down, Christmas in Florida. That was amazing. And then as we were down there, the tour or the production that went to Puerto Rico with Ling ended up needing a music director in San Francisco. So I got the call, and I flew over to San Francisco in less than 2 weeks and took over that company. And so I was with that company for over a year, just until we shut down. And in terms of doing a show, I kind of equate it with like with Michael Jackson. If its final tour had actually happened, people know it so well that they come in expecting to hear the soundtrack. But the most amazing thing about Hamilton is that we don't ask our cast to ever mimic the soundtrack. So it's really great because you get this amazing rush of like about 70% of the audience who already know the soundtrack, who have waited for years to see the show. And then for them to actually see what they've heard for so long come to life is really amazing. And then you have about 30% of people who know about the hype of Hamilton, but have never seen it. And to see them or to hear them experience it, it's an amazing thing. And then for me, being in San Francisco, the other thing that I really enjoyed is that, and it never happens a lot, is every time I step on the podium, at least once a week, I hear like, oh, it's a girl, which doesn't happen a lot. Or being in the city that is so multicultural with so many immigrants, you know, having these Asian or just, you know, POC families come in and go, oh my God, to see female and somebody who's of minority, you know, leading the charge. So for me, that's actually the thing that I'm most proud of.
Great. Yeah. I mean, what an amazing journey you've had from Hart Theater, sending a cold email to me, ending up music directing for Hamilton, the hottest show you could get your hands on, really, right?
Yeah, exactly.
And I'm so happy you touched on the point that when people go to see Hamilton, I was just going to ask you, are people expecting to hear the soundtrack? Are people expecting to hear the same version they watched on Disney Plus? Or, you know, and living up to that expectation or not? Is that a choice? And you already explained that. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think a lot of people, they know the word so well. So I think with a show that is so well known, the margin for error, as we know with live theater, nothing's ever perfect. No show is ever perfect, but the margin for error is much smaller. You know, sometimes depending on the night and depending if the audience have had a few drinks, you know, it could turn into a sing-along. And, you know, it gets a little rowdy, but in a way it's amazing because it means the audience is engaged. So that's really amazing. And I think the show, if you've seen it, it's so well done that once you kind of get caught up into the flow, it takes you on a journey that you don't even think about it anymore. And most people will say, oh yeah, that wasn't like Lynn, or that wasn't, you know, like Leslie, but it was so amazing anyway, because there's so much to see. Yeah.
Great. So you've had an amazing journey from Hart House to there. And I'm wondering maybe if you have, I'm sure there's people watching this right now who are students and are just starting their journey. Do you have any tips or any advice for them in terms of what they should be doing at this point in their path?
I think everyone's paths are different, obviously, you know, different music directors or musicians. They all come different walks of life. Some of them, you know, like me, is a classical pianist. Stephen Sondheim, one of his main music directors, Paul Gemignani, is a drummer. There are people who were conductors first. There were people who came from a jazz background. You know, everyone comes from different backgrounds. But I think if music theater is something that you definitely want to do, you have to be a jack of all trades. So, you know, in terms of listening and playing, just listening as much as you can and try to absorb as much as you can. And, you know, there's certain shows and certain things that's not really to my taste, but that doesn't take away its artistic merit. So I think it's just being open to everything. And the thing that I always say is, especially when you're young, is say yes to everything. Music theater, the performing arts, it's a trade, you know, and the only way to get better is by doing. And which is why I always say I'm so thankful for Hart House, because if I didn't get the opportunity to work with different people on so many different shows of different styles, I wouldn't be able to do what I do, because every experience that you have will inform the next experience, good or bad. So it's always saying yes and just taking those opportunities, whether, you know, it pays a lot or it doesn't, but it's really about, you know, gathering all the experiences and making them yours. And then you'll realize what works for you and what doesn't.
That's great advice. That's fantastic advice. And, you know, Lily, you're somebody who made such a big impact on Hart House Theater, and I hope you know that. Because without your stewardship of the whole music side of what we did back then, we would not have done all of the musicals since then. So you really laid the foundation for a lot of the work that came after you, and you really need to know that. And you know, everyone who worked with you knew that you were tremendously, your work ethic was tremendous. You're such a hard worker, so passionate for the work, and so talented. And you're so easy to work with, and it's great to reconnect with you finally.
Yes, absolutely.
You really need to know that you impacted so many people that walked through those doors, and we're not even talking about the audience members, like the cast members and the band members. I mean, you made such an impact, and so you are remembered very fondly at Hart House, and it's great to be able to chat with you here now. So Lily, I'm just wondering, to sort of to end off, what do you think is next? Do you think that there's a lot of work being done on the virtual platform? Is that something that you're looking to, or are you thinking that you're going to wait for things to get back to back to normal, as they say?
That's $1 million question, isn't it? I think it's like, I'm excited about what's going to come. I think I think it'll be a while before we are back to normal, if there ever is a normal. You know, it's probably going to be a new normal for wherever that is. With that being said, a lot of, I think, young musicians, people who are, you know, in high school and or on a collegiate level, they wonder about the value of pursuing the performing arts or a degree in performing arts. And my rebuttal for that's always, well, what is Netflix? What is Spotify? What is all of that? It's all performing arts. And I think the arts is so important, so vital now more than anything, because I think as human beings, we are all trapped, right? You know, in our bubbles, in our social circles, in our bubbles by ourselves. And the way to release that is through art. So I'm really excited, one, to see what comes out of all of this. But also, I think, like you said, you know, with the digital medium, one thing I think that's going to be really exciting to see, and people are already starting to do a little bit more of, which is doing shows, you know, or presentations on Zoom. It started off as, you know, everybody in their squares and things weren't synced up, to now, you know, you could see certain people, they're using Zoom backgrounds as a set pieces, or, you know, one person, and they're not the same chairs, but one person passing a chair and somebody taking it out of the screen, you know, and things like that. And I'm really excited to see what comes out of that. I'm excited to see how theater will kind of change with what we have now, how we interact with audience members. But I think there is something that is so unspoken, this magic that where everybody congregates in the same place, because we don't talk about this a lot, but the audience is so much a part of the performance, you know, and depending on the mood of the audience, it completely changes the interaction and it changes each performance. That's why I love doing, you know, I'm sure you as well, why we love live theater. So I'm really excited for the day when we all go back. I think there is going to be room for everything. I think there is going to be, I hope there's going to be new mediums in terms of more audio as well. And in a way, I think that's good because, you know, our attention span is so short now, right? With TikTok and with Instagram live videos, not live, but like Instagram stories, that's what it is. So I think it's going to be really amazing, where I think now it's actually forcing us to expand our attention spans a little bit more. So yeah, all of the above, basically, I think it's for people and producers to be more creative. So I'm excited to see what comes out of that.
Fantastic. Well, Lily, thank you for joining us, I mean, me or all of us today, and sharing your Hart House Theater journey and beyond. And we will be watching your career, of course, and wishing you all the luck in the future. And don't be a stranger. You know where we are. When we can open the doors again, it would be great to see you in person. So Lily, thank you so much, and stay well.
Thank you for having me.
This is